writer in your life, and if you could provide readers with one billionth of the pleasure that you got out of Catch-22, you would be a happy man, wouldn't you? And I thought, yeah, I would be. And that was the beginning of my wanting to write, I think, was hearing Mom's stories and then reading story again, brought into the contemporary language and world that I knew as a young American kid. And so that was sort of my launch. I went to college, I got an English degree, and I read all the great stuff at UCI. It was a wonderful program. Yeah, advice, a small, sidebar, but advice number 2, modest advice, take the phone off the hook and don't let people steal your time. And number 2, read the best stuff you can get your hands on. If it's not any good, stop reading. So college taught me that. We grew up on Shakespeare and Aristotle and Plato, and we read the best stuff. 4 years of that was just great. I got out and got a newspaper job, and I started writing my first novel. I was, 22 years old, and I spent a year writing this little novel, and it was a short book, and it was about a 200-page double-spaced manuscript, and I called it The Bottom Line, and it was about a young surfer growing up in Newport Beach, whose father absconds with the company fortune and the company secretary. It was kind of based on the old Robert Vesco tale. I don't know if you remember Robert Vesco. I think he was a local guy, wasn't he? Vesco? San Diego? Stole the money, took the secretary, vanished. Something like that. Anyway, that's what my book was about. And I finished it, I wrote it. And I met a guy at a party at college who was a young hotshot editor in New York at the time, Delacorte, Morgan Entrigan. This is 1980. 80? Yeah, 80, say. I sent Morgan a manuscript, and he called me back a couple weeks later. He said, yeah, I remember you from the party, and we had a great time. We talked Shakespeare and literature all night. And he says, I read your book, and I'm really impressed that you could finish the book. I can't publish it, and I don't think anyone else in New York will, because nobody cares about surfers growing up in Newport Beach, California. I said, okay. He said, but, you have a little bit of talent, and you have stick-to-itiveness, which is even more important than talent. You finished the damn book, and you nailed it to me. And it's 250 pages long, and it's your first manuscript, and you finished it. So what you should do, Jeff, is read through the New York Times bestseller list or the LA Times, whatever you get. Read the synopses of the stories, and write something that sounds like one of those. Write something that's more commercial than a surfer growing up in Newport Beach. So I said, okay, I can do that. And I was out of college by then. And as a college graduate and a highbrow guy from UCI, reading the guys I was just telling you about, I was suffering recidivism, which means that I was reading all the stuff that my non-college friends were reading as soon as I got out of college. So I had to catch up with Robert D. Parker, Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, John D. MacDonald, Ross D. MacDonald, all these kind of mystery guys is what my non-college friends were reading. So I read it too, and I loved it. And I thought, ooh, this is good stuff. It's succinct and it's neat, and they don't waste words, and you can never figure out really what's going on, and they're really sarcastic, and the dialogue's great, It'd be great to write one of these. So I set out to write myself a mystery, and you'll love this as a writer. So I sat down, I'm a couple years out of college, I'm really inspired, I'm going to be a great writer. I'm working as a reporter on a newspaper by day, and then at night I steal the typing paper and I take home a big stack of typing paper and the typewriter. It was an IBM Selectric back then. This is way before computers. So I steal the typewriter, wrap the power cord around it, and I take my 50 pages of really good, good bond paper, and I take it home after work, and weekends and after work, and holidays, I would work on my novel. And so I worked hard on this novel. Set in Laguna Beach, it's sort of a father-son story, kind of making it up as I go along and trying to get things right, and living in Laguna, and I'm really inspired by that little town and stuff, and meeting some interesting people, riding along with cops and doing all the fun things you do, and still a young man, 22, 23, whatever I was, and very much still in the thrall of my literary heroes at the time. So I spent a year and wrote a draft, and it was a big, fat, legitimate draft. It was 500, double-spaced pages, and I finished it. And I thought, wow, this is really good. And I sat down at the end of the year and I read it. realized that when I read the book, that I'd written 500 pages of really bad Raymond Chandler. I thought,